Good morning and good afternoon to our friends in Europe. Welcome to our webinar, The Golden Age of Ransomware 2016. Our presenter today is known to many of you. He's our CTO, Oscar Marquez, a well-known man in the security industry. We'll give it over to him in just a second, but let me first say that if you have any questions, we will be having a question and answer session when Oscar's completed his formal presentation. And you can ask those questions using the chat box over to the right, and I will keep track of them, and I will come back on and line up those questions for Oscar and get him to answer them. So without any more babbling, I will turn you over to Oscar Marquez.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for your time today. I'm Oscar Marquez. Literally going to run through today on our agenda is where we've come from malware to where we're heading with ransomware. Just quick overview of the early days of ransomware itself, what's happening with cryptographic ransomware attacks today, and the last moving really iteration of what is really happening with cryptographic ransomware. And then I'll just give you a quick overview how we are trying to deal with the problems and really being effective in that space. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end of this slide deck. So what we've been seeing is that today's malware is really centered around profit. So what we keep coming across is that people aren't really getting hit any longer by content type of malware scan problems, or they're getting infected on a virus or a propagation of a Trojan. What we are seeing now that people are just completely getting locked out. We see more and more of that happen on a daily basis, and really effectively it's come from the back end of where malware started. We are starting to see blended threats and APT threats really come together at another level that we've never seen in the past. Starting to see, oh, I think I just got dropped off. Am I back on, Eric? Okay, I'll keep going. So we've really started to see that all the propagations of ransomware today are really using every tool in the book when it came to malware that we were effectively trying to block in the past. We keep saying the past we're talking the last 6 months. We've seen this really take off to the next level, and it hasn't stopped. If anything, it's actually increased in speeds. What did we see in 2015 was literally a huge detection of level of blocks. When I mean by blocks and attacks, we detected more than 42 million attacks globally in 2015 as an industry, not just as sheriff. We did see a global lossage of $445 billion by cybercrime globally. And we kept seeing crypto wall versions grow. Now in version 4, for example, 407,000 attempts of infections last year alone. And I'll show you what's happening currently as well. Damages have really been really pointed at the crypto wall type environments in the last sort of 6 to 7 months, but we saw 325 million. And that was just reported losses that the market had actually announced. We feel that could probably be about 25% of the real damage that we saw last year altogether. And this data was actually collated around 50 million SME customers around the world in every region, right? And this was from a third-party analyst. The origins of ransomware really started with the scenario back in the day where we just saw that they locked one machine. They went in there and they expected you to do some sort of Bitcoin or money pack type of environment, and then you unencrypt those files on the local machine. This has really taken off from being just a standalone type of environment to really starting to be a copycat thought leadership type of environment. We're starting to see more and more attacks really taking polymorphic to the next level. So once upon a time, you were just trying to unlock one machine. Now you're actually unlocking multiple machines in one company in different regions all at one given time. So the expense level just keeps growing from that angle as well. What we're seeing from what is ransomware and how does it actually act? Instead of locking the system, crypto ransomware user files, it'll go across every type of document file, every image file, etc. So it literally does lock everything. We have seen people try to actually build different types of tools, but if you see the path of the way things are moving, it'll do the installation. 89% of the time, these files are actually coming in through email. The rest of the time, they're actually dropping down from a web server itself. Then it contacts the server. The server will then go out there and download the payload, and then it will start the encryption process. Once the encryption process is actually 85% done, it will actually start the extortion process. So this is the typical scenario, the workflow of how it's been happening, and we're not seeing it give up from that angle as well. What has Sheriff been seeing in the last, since the start of the year? We've seen 500,000 different variants of cryptographic type of environments. It hasn't slowed down. If anything, it's actually increased. We're seeing it actually grow at certain levels. What we are seeing now is we're seeing Pacific storms, whereas before we were seeing one variant that would do a storm of 10,000 in one day. Now we're seeing one variant that'll do 300,000 in one day, try to attack the globe. This is actually slowed down from the perspective of how many different types of variants, but it's actually increased in storm size by many folds, right? So we are as a company capturing these on a daily basis. We are blocking these and detecting these on a daily basis. But partly the main issue that we're seeing is that we are literally fighting a never-ending battle at the moment. We have got organized crime in the thousands competing against small vendors, large vendors, etc. And I think every vendor today is actually having these issues and trying to deal with these issues at multiple levels. We don't see an end to this, so not anytime soon. We predicted 2 years ago spam would be dying to a certain level, 50 to 60%. We're there today, but we're now starting to see spammers using different types of crypto type of payloads to try to get people infected at a growing rate than we did before. So the spam levels have dropped by nearly 40%, but the types of attacks that are coming through now at a greater level than we've ever seen before as well. So the math is pretty simple. They send you 100,000 emails. They try to get through. The attack will last less than 5 minutes. Once it gets through, it's 0.5% of those emails that result in any successful infections. Now, when you say that's very little, if you look today globally, in the millions of users that we have, 0.5% is a very high rate, whereas legacy malware was in the 0.01%. So they're being more effective than any type of propagations that we've seen in the past, and this will just keep growing long term as well. What we've seen as well is our customers are paying ransomware. In most cases, we see ransomware when we're actually moving one customer to us, and then they want to keep cleaning that ransomware. The realities are, what we're seeing in the market, what we're hearing from our customers, etc., it's on average around $250. So if you in one day do a bunch of attacks, you can raise a large amounts of money very quickly. So organized crime today is doing on 0.5% of the global internet users today is an extraordinarily large amount of money. So we've actually come to a conclusion with a lot of other vendors working with the FBI and other people that we're only seeing 0.1% of all these ransomware payments being actually notified to different authorities. Most people pay it and move on, and it's becoming an alarming fact, right? So again, most of these people spend 5 minutes of their day. They don't really worry about the attack. They don't really worry about the victim. and 99.9% of them don't go to jail. So we're really starting to deal with a criminal who no longer has a threat behind their head. They are a moving target without actually putting handcuffs on them today. You know, we keep seeing different types of evolving attacks. These are the ones that are actually notified in the press. And as I said before, you know, for example, if you look at Locky ransomware, there's already 30, 40,000 variants of this. There is more copycat variants of this version today than there are of the previous. What we are seeing is that every version of a new version that comes out literally increases by 100% to 2,000%, depending on the different type of attack vectors they go for. And it's not slowing down. And like I said before, what we've seen just in the last month alone, we've seen a lot of hospital attacks. We've seen a lot of local ransomware hitting banks. And when I mean banks, I mean regional banks, small banks, looking to get different types of tellers. And we've also seen some retail customers being hit by this as well. They're starting now to look at the POS environments, sales order process environments, where they can literally go in, lock the whole store. The store pays $150 to $250 to open that environment, and they move on. And they know that they can do these kind of drive-by type of attacks without ever being detected or ever being actually arrested for the problems. So what makes Locky probably the smartest of them all at the moment is that previous versions were really just connecting to a command and control type of server. They would run a script. They would either run 20 to 30 different IP addresses or URLs at the same time. They would pull down the payload from those servers that were, you know, located globally, and then they would benefit from all these standalone type of environments. The infrastructure could be taken down, etc., but it couldn't stop the encryption side of things from happening, right? Now, one of the problems that we see with Locky is that they have a domain generation algorithm that literally bypasses the command and control structure and allows them to deploy on a scalable environment. Now, why has this become an issue? Well, the reality is it's harder, one, to track them, and two, we have thousands of criminals at the moment building on this domain and generation algorithm. This is something what we would have called today the active directory of crime, due to the fact that these guys have gone out there and have started to build a very clever and smart infrastructure to, one, eliminate capture, but two, allow them just to scale. This in itself is becoming alarming to most people and most threat analysts as well. So the DGA, which I just said was before, is using a seeded algorithm. It constantly generates new domains. So just blocking a domain, in the past we was looking at URLs, for example, that, let's say, acme.com/pickup/?. So you could add that into your database and you could block automatically that was a ransomware URL trying to actually download a payload. Well, this will generate in real time 20, 30 new domains, pull from those domains, and you'd never be able to actually capture that payload capture rate. So being aware of these things is important, because it's not something the market is actually addressing properly at the moment, due to the fact that it's such a moving target, and the only way you can learn from these things is from different algorithms or big data environments to actually learn from these scenarios. So, you know, the seeding issue is going to be the largest issue moving forward for all these types of attack. And what we are looking at today and trying to grow out to keep up with these guys is, you know, machine learning that actually learns those different types of data sets in real time. So this also allows the attacker to keep their infrastructure moving. So by allowing your infrastructure to move, literally you've designed a follow the sun mechanism where anywhere in the world, at any given time, you can hit any different type of server and download a payload. So they're using bots to deploy these payloads. They're using different types of robots to go out there and deploy. So we estimate at any given time there's nearly 400,000 servers, web servers in the world infected, with all these types of different domains that they can actually capture or download these ghost payloads from. So it makes it extremely hard for a researcher to actually pinpoint some of these things in real time. So we are taking down different types of infrastructure environments. We are really working to mimic the CNC infrastructures that they have built. We work extremely hard to do all those things, but the reality is we work even harder from an analytical environment. If you look at today where the world's going, if you have a big data environment, you can see these anomalies in real time, and this is what helps us the most. Due to the fact that they can't hide the process from executing, they can't hide any type of execution from, in a lot of ways, from actually happening. You can do a lot of different ghost or stealth environments, but there are things that are actually going to trigger anomalies and actually help you from blocking or actually at least quarantining what the issue may be. Again, we keep telling people the different variants and versions that are happening today is getting worse and worse. So in an average day, you could have 25,000 different versions of Lucky, and each version has 2 to 3 different variant changes in it. So it is a moving target, and it's much faster moving than we've seen in the past 10 years of malware scanning, right? Or malware detection, let's put it that way. So staying on top is our goal, and I think, you know, getting back to providing the latest updates and the tools to combat everything from different threats to different kind of mechanisms of execution. But the realities are, you know, one of the biggest drawbacks today is most best-of-breed products don't see. So this is not really helping the market from the perspective of how they should be actually addressing most of these issues today. So as I said before, you have to have an environment that's learning. No longer is a signature the epicenter of your life. No longer is a rules behavioral engine the epicenter of your life. We are looking for anomalies in real time, and I think moving forward, it's the only way you will be able to combat most of these type of situations. So when customers do get hit, one of the terrible things is that you're on a call with a customer and they're having this extremely terrible issue. What you really have to sort of consider is the outcomes. And I think one of the worst mistakes most people do is do not have a proper backup environment or recovery environment, right? You also have to make sure you protect yourself from the multi-vector environments. Web email are your number one environments for ransomware to deploy from. Endpoint really is just an execution point, and it is the point of encryption. So there are mechanisms that you can do to go in and out to actually deliver strength and hardening of the OS, for example. Make sure that you keep the OS up to date at any given time. Restrict the ability of end users to install or run any software. You can use group policies from Microsoft or any type of policy enforcement on the OS. Stop the execution of as many levels of encryption as you can with group policies. And there are great articles from Microsoft on how to harden those environments. Is this going to be the magic bullet? No. It'll give you a 90 to 95% chance, plus your endpoint protection, etc. But you really need to do this. Gone are the days of just having a lax environment where you think an antivirus product is going to do everything for you. Make sure you disable macros. You know, we spoke about macros 15 years ago, but now it is a plus. It is a must. You must enforce this from any way you can. Again, really get down into the education level with your end users. We see that, you know, users will click on any unsolicited link on a URL, on an email. They'll go into social media and they'll click on a link that they think is actually something that's actually beneficial to them, but the reality it's not. if it looks bad, don't touch it. And I think what's really coming of age right now is security education. And I think there's something that, it's not gonna stop the door from being broken into, but the reality is it's going to give you that extra 1 to 2% of protection. And if you can educate them, go ahead and educate them. How can we help as a company? Sheriff really is a big data engine. So what we do, which is different to other vendors, we are a pure cloud environment. So we get to see everything that our customers are seeing. We get to see everything the device is seeing. So the reality for us is from URLs, files, emails, and IP addresses are running through our system in real time all the time. So we dynamically classify websites. We do threat identification in real time across multiple vectors. We do global intelligence in real time. So we'll find in any given site, we'll find an anomaly and block that directly. Now, do we have any false positives? We might have one 0.00001 at the moment, but the reality is you would rather have a false positive than be attacked in most cases, right? So we have a powerful reporting environment that allows you to dive into all these types of scenarios, and we are better than a sandbox in most cases. The reality is our users are actually a real-time sandbox. What you see today is people moving files into a sandbox, analyzing that sandbox. The realities are for us, we see that file, we see that attack propagating in real time, and we can act on it. Whereas in the past, we had a lot of great marketing from other vendors saying that our intelligence labs follows the sun. Well, when you have 600 analytical people doing threat intelligence, it's a great story. But the realities are you need machine learning to actually keep up with the threats. So we come across a lot of these vendors who play that card, but you really need to be able to be as proactive as possible. And hence why we built this huge global intelligence environment in the background. What we've seen is a propagation of best-of-breed solutions. And don't get me wrong, there are great products in the market today, and they do great Pacific and vector security. What we haven't seen is people do the complete story. And what we mean by that is you need every vector of threat to actually talk to each other, to work with each other. How does Sheriff work, for example? So we block something at the email level. Now we protect web and endpoint of that threat. So, for example, if for whatever reason one of our customers is not using our email product, we'll block it at the endpoint level now. If that customer is not using it, our web product and it's downloaded to the endpoint, the same vice versa. So this happens in real time without an update mechanism for the endpoint, because our endpoint also connects to the cloud. So by doing that, it allows you to do multi-scan in real time, and it all talks to each other. So when you talk about policy enforcement, this is the only way you can enforce policy. If each device talks to each device, each policy talks to each policy, each threat is actually proactively added protection to in real time, and not through a legacy type of update mechanism. Don't get me wrong, we still update our endpoint, but even if our endpoint was 3 days out of not being updated, you're still getting protection due to the fact that the endpoint will go to the cloud and look up that file, etc., etc. So what this allows us to do is do a really good job in the 0 day, in the polymorphic environment, and it gives us the benefit that we don't have to just expect that endpoint to be proactively updated for whatever reason they didn't do an update. Our endpoints are updated every 3 minutes, and if there is a machine that for whatever reason went offline, the moment that it goes online, it automatically pulls, but at the same time, it automatically will check any file with the cloud, which normally is a small 3K file lookup at any given point. So how do we do all this stuff? So we look at ourselves differently to other people. We have a great endpoint. We have great messaging security. We have great web security. We have data leakage prevention in motion. We have archiving for compliance reasons. everything feeds through our big data environment. So, excuse me. So if we see, for example, a correlation between a data leakage policy and an email coming through, we'll log that. We'll log that as a threat. We can see the threat propagation. We can see that it's trying to download a payload because our data leakage is also working with web security, and we'll block it at that level. So you might have a content type file, etc., and we'll block it at that level. Again, everything flows through Sheriff, so we see everything, and that's what gives us a 360-degree protection environment compared to other people from that perspective. Again, some key features on our products today. We are market to market. When I say that, we cover all the features our other vendors cover today. The difference is features alone don't protect you. What I mean by that is most of the features that we add today and we keep building on is forensics reporting, policy enforcement, etc., and allows you to keep connecting to more and more devices. But you really need to have the back end talking to each product from an individual standpoint as well. Same goes with our endpoint product. We cover what the market does today. We are trying to build best of breed across every product at constant moments of the day, and really giving our customers what I call a constant policy enforced environment with a back-end threat intelligence environment. Because, you know, people will say to you, we protect at the Trojan and the malware level. Well, the reality is Trojans are ever moving, spyware is ever moving, and you know, the one of many ratio really works with Sheriff from that perspective. We do application control, simple deployment. You can use group policies, etc. And we have our security compliance reporting that is cross-pollinated across all products, and directory integration across all products at the same time as well. We do media type of enforcement as well, and content type. Excuse me. We have the same scenario when it comes to email. We build different types of spam technologies and phishing protection technologies due to the fact that we can see most of the blended threats are actually coming through email today. We, again, have our own threat intelligence antivirus in the background. We do blended threat protection, APT scenarios as well. And again, our data leakage policy environment goes right across the three products. So this helps you actually enforce straight out of the bat, and you don't have to deploy a DLP environment as well. Inbound and outbound, policy compliance and security compliance, and all across the same type structures. So once you deploy the directory structure, it covers all products. Same goes for reporting, etc. It makes your life just that much easier. We have 35 data centers around the world today. That gives us global redundancy. What this allows us to do is our customers can roam globally from any angle of the world. And what our environment is, a fully virtualized environment. So what this allows us to do is upscale, downscale, increase as much as we want from any angle. And we have a private backbone that allows us to make sure that every data center has close to a terabyte of data transport. So this allows us to give our customers the best of breed without having a latency issue as well. We also have 1,000 points of access. What this does, we do PGP peering around the world, and this allows us to really be as close to the end user as possible and reroute you to the nearest environment as well. We have client auto authentication, so our clients really don't need to a single sign-on environment, and we make sure we authenticate every user from web, email, and endpoint to make sure that anything that is actually not authenticated is bad, because, you know, not allowing a machine to authenticate to your cloud that has no real structure of authentication is an identification straight away for some sort of propagation or malware attack from that perspective. All right, Eric, I'll open it up to questions. I hope this has been helpful. More than happy to answer any questions, guys.
Thank you, Oscar. We've had a number of questions, and you can continue to ask them in the chat box over on the right. But I'll begin. Should we assume there will be more ransomware from Macs? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so we've already seen a two different variants come through, and by the looks of things, we're expecting it to grow extremely large over the next 12 months. It's not going to be as large as the Windows attacks are because it's more of a profitable environment, but the reality is we are seeing it and it is growing.
You mentioned earlier that hospitals, banks, and retail, you're seeing variants attack them. Are they being specifically attacked, and why?
Most of the reasons they're being attacked is because hospitals have moved in a lot of ways into different types of device environments. So they run iPads for their records. They run different type of back-end structures that allow them to log into external parties, etc. So a lot of these devices aren't secured. Doctors, nurses are able to actually take some of these devices home. So what's happening is they don't have any great roaming policy. They don't have, in some cases, great roaming infrastructure in securing that device. And the other thing is they also have a lot of legacy solutions that have really been, not that they're open to the world, but they're vulnerable to the world. So they become a great execution platform as well for ransomware.
There's a question about our product. Do you replace our ISP?
So if you look at Sheriff, we stand between you and the ISP. So we are man in the middle between you and the ISP. We clean everything the ISP sends through the pipe and literally deliver the payload to you, and then we send it back through the ISP out to the world. But we literally scrub all inbound and outbound traffic through web and email through the ISP, yes.
Which vector is most affected, web or email?
Well, I would probably say today I would keep web and email as your two threat vectors which are the strongest. And the reason I say that is because if you do get attacked through email and your web solution is not blocking the payload or the upload or the lookup, then they're both as bad as each other. But delivery of the attacks, 70% are coming through email and 30% through web, but all payload delivery is coming through web. So hence why I give them as much weight as each other, right?
Here's another question about the product. How does it integrate with Office 365?
Good question. So our web filtering works just fine. Our web security works just fine with Office 365. And we do inbound, outbound scanning for mail. So we have a lot of customers today that Office 365 hasn't been very good at spam and malware protection, and Microsoft acknowledges that. So we can sit in the middle of them and scan all the email inbound and outbound, and we can also scan web traffic for uploads and downloads from Office 365 as well, from a DLP and from a malware perspective as well.
We've had a couple of questions about the network. Should ransomware cause us to rethink the idea of having always-on read-write connections to network share files?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I would start using some sort of authentication structure if you can. If you can't, make sure you do your group policy or type of structures where you enforce those things. There are a lot of products out there today that will actually put a east-west kind of authentication environment internally, and especially for cloud products as well. So we haven't seen yet one that's actually gone to the cloud and what's it called, encrypted cloud files yet. We've seen a bit of Dropbox, but nothing else. But I would probably start to enforce the log-on to your users to different devices. Single sign-on was a great idea pre this type of attack vector.
So a couple of questions about the ransom. First of all, should we ever pay the ransom? Is there a situation where you should pay the ransom? And what's the average ransom dollar amount that you're seeing?
Right. So there's 2 points here. So point one is Today there are a couple of products out there that are, some vendors have actually offered free type of, unencrypt tools and stuff like that. We test those products. Main issue there is they're very good at a certain level, and if there's a change, you have to wait for that change. So you might be left in the dark. I would try those products first before paying. But if it's a small amount, I would just pay it, because the reality is for $250 or $300, it really isn't worth the headache. You're better off moving on. You don't want to stop your business. But if you see that it's really, we've seen one or two customers who have been in the thousands and thousands of dollar range, then it's time to think your strategy, but they've paid for it as well. So I think in a lot of ways, you're better off paying due to the fact that most of these tools, in some cases, when you do get hit, are not ready. So they just don't have that type of decryption methodology, or whatever the case may be. And it's not because they're bad tools. It's just, they're constantly fighting the fight, right?
What type of backup solution is best to ensure against ransomware?
I would be doing, if I had the perfect world, I would be doing a cloud-based backup and a local-based backup, due to the fact that you want to have an off-site just in case. So I don't specifically sponsor any products or anything like that, but I do live with the idea of if you could actually have, for example, a localized backup of a machine and then a cloud that takes a mirror image of the localized, it's a good thing to do.
And one more question about the product. How does iSheriff recognize new malware in the wild? What's known as a zero-day exploit.
Yeah. So a zero-day or a polymorphic malware. So you'll see that Sheriff doesn't really advertise like every other vendor, hey, we found this type of variant, because we don't really care. What we care about is making sure that we find a variant and we stamp it. And we'll stamp it with any different type of name. So we have different techniques. We use anomaly detection, we use heuristics, we use different types of machine learning, and really we'll see something act, and our system will actually say this is 97% malware, and it'll just detect and block and add a signature to that automatically. We don't we don't have 800 people doing threat labs. We have a team, but that team is designed to keep feeding our big data engine. The other thing we do as well is we take in feeds from hundreds of different websites globally. We have multi-scanner running in the back with multiple vendors as well, and we also take feeds from multiple vendors as well. So it's the constant thing that we're doing, and it's a machine learning that correlates across all these type of vectors.
All right, that brings us to the end of our question time. I thank everyone for attending the webinar today, and for those of you who've asked questions, and also thank Oscar for an excellent presentation. The recording will be available to all of you to share, and I thank you very much for attending with us today.